Hey, everybody. Welcome to the May virtual tasting for Eureka Whiskey Club. Hope everyone's having a great month and trying to find some semblance of good weather. It's been a little bit difficult here in California, but if you're like our guest Chase tonight, maybe you'll take a trip over to Mexico because he's coming to us live from Tulum just to make us even more jealous. He makes great whiskey, but he also has to rub it in our face that he's hanging out in Tulum right now. But Chase, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll go through some housekeeping stuff, and then we'll dive right in. But thanks for joining us tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me, man. It's cool to be part of the Eureka Whiskey Club. We're excited to have everybody open this blend. But my name's Chase Hazelbaker. My family owns the distillery. I have the lucky opportunity to kind of just have total creative direction of this Nulu thing, and me and a couple buddies just kind of get to do everything. It's really, really fun and cool. And again, we're just thrilled to be partnering with folks like you all. We never dreamt of this thing, but thanks for having us.
Awesome. So we'll obviously dive into all things Nulu and taste some whiskey and all the fun stuff. For those joining live on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you're watching us from, we'll have our Q&A towards the end, and we'll choose two really cool questions from the night. And we have some awesome prizes that Chase and his team have been so gracious to give away. So tonight we will have a bottle of Nulu Amburana finished whiskey, and then we'll have a Nulu double oaked whiskey to give away. Anything to say about either of those, Chase, to kind of entice or get the creative juices flowing for our guests, for our members to ask some cool questions?
Yeah. If you like the toasted, the double oaked is, if you know anything about Nulu, or if you don't, toasted is that's our flagship, but double oaked is like toasted on steroids. And then Amburana is something new we're playing with. It's a Brazilian teak wood, typically used in cachaça, but we're finishing, 6-year, usually 6-7-year bourbon with it. And man, we're getting like cinnamon toast crunch and gingerbread cookies, vanilla, tobacco. It's just a super complex, very, very rich pour. Most people taste it and they're like, holy crap, give me a full glass.
So, yeah, we just did an Amburana finished whiskey with another distillery a couple months ago. It was a light whiskey. So if you like the flavor of that and wanted something maybe a little more bold, I'm sure the Nulu steps it up.
I bet light whiskey, since depending on the age, just being a higher proof, it's like barrel proof vodka basically. That had to be really cool. Just it's
super interesting. I think one of the cool things with the club is that we try to introduce people to things that they know and love are always really cool. But also introduce them to new brands, new styles, so on and so forth. So I think that's a good segue into you kind of telling us about Nulu. What's the history of the brand? How you guys started? How long you've been around? Just kind of dive into it.
Yeah. So believe it or not, my family got in this industry by accident. So my family has always been in financial planning and insurance, and so we help retirees, right? My dad's a certified financial planner. He manages.
Hey, whiskey helps retirees too, Chase.
I'm saying that's what I've tried to tell my dad. I'm like, look, we can take all your clients, take them to the distillery, and they'll have a way better retirement. But we can have them invest in our barrels, So that whole, for me, I did that business for 8 years, knocking doors, making cold calls. It's a great business. You can help people. But at the same time, finding someone that's willing to take your help is hard. Whereas this business is so fun. It's so cool. Doing Zooms or, lives like this is so awesome. But the way we got into this, there was a guy named Jay Blevins, whose real name was Ben Blevins, and Harrison. So Harrison still works with us. He's our master distiller. He's in Louisville now. He does anything from, like me, clean the floors to dump barrels to taste barrels to help make blends happen. But so Harrison and his partner, Jay Ben, we'll call him Jay, My dad met them in late 2015. They had a tequila brand and a rum brand that were in the Forecastle Fest, which is like one of Louisville's biggest music festivals. So they had two big sponsorships. They beat out Bacardi and Cuervo because Liquor Barn there helped it all make it happen. So, they got that spot. They got on the shelves at Liquor Barn, which is like 25 stores in Kentucky. They had good things going for them. So fast forward to April 1st, April Fool's 2016, this guy, Jay, whose real name we found out later in the week was Ben, they had taken a moonshining charge. He had fathered a son in his brother's name because his real name was Ben, but, he was going by Jay, which was his brother's name. This guy made like $1 million mess. Like within, I think like by April 4th, the venture capital group that started Sam Adams, Boston Capital, they flew in on their private jet and they're like, Mr. Hazelbaker, we own 80% of Baxter Distilling Co. My dad, being the West Texan he is, he's like, what the hell is that? He's like, I own PCS Distilling Co. and I got the lease on this building. I don't know shit about Baxter Distilling Co. because that company was called Derby City Spirits. So like he had sold 250% of this DSP, and it's like, I don't even know how you sell something that much. He had taken like he was taking like money for like weddings, right? Like a deposit. We were going to make a brand called the 11 Angry Wives because there was like 11 wedding deposits that we just had to eat it. Like my dad just picked up the bag. He picked up the good and the bad and like, oh, you had a wedding deposit with Jay Ben? Well, free wedding for you. I'll eat the bill. And so like from 2016 until the beginning of 2020, my dad was trying to clean up this mess. They were trying to distill, like Harrison was still involved, distilling vodka, gin, and rum. And we were barrel aging tequila we were sourcing from Jalisco. And like, so this whole mess, like we still find stuff out about this guy, like till this day. Like people message us on Facebook or what have you. And they're like, that guy's in Tennessee. Like he served 3 years in Tennessee, but he's like running a restaurant in his mom's name now. So who knows? He was one in a bunch of states.
He's still out there.
He's still out there scheming. He's just doing all the wrong shit. So, thankfully, we got to about 2020. My dad was like on his hands and knees praying, like we're out of money. He'd leveraged both his houses, like his other business. He was making money, like helping people, do their retirement thing. And he was taking that money that he's getting for advising and just throwing it into the fire that was the distillery. So at the beginning of 2020, I'm like, man, I'd gotten the bug. Like I'd fallen in love with whiskey in 2019. I was like, Dad, I think we can make this work. If you can get me 10 bourbon barrels, Total Wine will pick 4 for all, like one for each store in Kentucky. And he was like, what? It'll take how many cases is that? I was like,
how did you already have an in with Total Wine from?
So I was working for, so because of the fraud, we were with RNDC like before my family owned the distillery, but because it got ripped off of shelves and like ABC raided people and like it was just really bad because of Ben, no one wanted to deal with us in Kentucky. So Kroger wanted our vodka, gin, and rum, and we got with a seafood distributor, like it's called Fish Market. I worked for them for like a couple of years, but they got licensed to get us into Kroger. So they got a wholesale license for alcohol, and I worked for them for 2019 and 2020. But I started drinking whiskey. I was doing the keto thing, and then like before I was drinking like Woodford and ginger ale, and then by April, May of 2019, I'm like chasing Blanton's, doing the standing in line thing. There was no COVID yet. It was like go find all the shit you can find, and then like by the end of the year, I was getting E.H. Taylor Barrel Proof, the old Fitz decanters, like Willett Family Estates. Like I was getting all this fire whiskey because all these people were like, yo, you have no good product. But I would hang out in the store and just be like, look, I'm just trying to figure out this industry. My family's in like a bad situation. My dad's got millions of dollars tied up in this distillery. And like, so I made friends with the Party Sources, the Liquor Barns, the Total Wines in Kentucky. And so that's how we had an in. Like Total Wine took in our clears, and I think they still have like juice from the initial buy, which is kind of sad. Right. Like, people buy the tequila, luckily, but they might sell like a bottle of vodka a month. But so what is that? Like February 2020, we took out a PayPal loan. It was like we give you this much money today and you pay it back 52 weeks. So like we give you 100 grand a day and you give them 2 weeks for 52 weeks. So we bought 20 barrels of 5-year bourbon. You know, it was MGP, 21% rye. And those barrels landed February 14th, 2020. So Valentine's Day 2020. And as you know, like within 2 weeks, the whole world was like, if you go outside, you're going to die. So Total Wine completely backed right. Lo and behold, it could have been one of the best.
And that's how this club started, man. I get it.
right. It's like, we're at home. What do you want to do? I want to try some new bourbon. Okay. And that's how like our experimentation started. Like the first, 20 barrels of MGP, you can only sell so much straight MGP when you have 20 barrels, right? Like luckily out of our first 20 barrels, I think like 10 were sold as single barrels and they were solid. Like they were good. But then like we bought another 12 barrels because like we didn't have money. We had a shit ton of debt. So and then it was like, now we own 20 barrels again. And then within probably 6 months, by August, we owned probably 40, 50 barrels. And we're like, I think we can make this work. Total Wine had been able to pick by then. Party Source Corporate let them pick some barrels. And then next thing you know, it's like October and we had, I think it was like 60 barrels that turned 5 because we had to start buying like 4.5 year just because we're still in the same situation. We can only buy what's available on the market. But from there, it was like you blink and man, it's like I look back and I'm like, we've done what in the last 2.5, 3 years? Like it's nuts. Like to be on the Zoom with you all and you guys, like there's 1,200 bottles that you guys did with us that are toasted bourbon. It's delicious. I'm sitting here sipping it and it gets butterier and butterier. But the whole reason this came about is like those first initial barrels, the ones that weren't that good were like, how do we fix these? And luckily back then it was like, you could just call Kelvin and be like, hey, we're 10 miles away. Can we get 2 toasted barrels that are 24-month season staves? And they're like, yeah, come pick them up tomorrow. And you're like, sweet. Nowadays, oak's allocated. You can't get new oak for shit unless you're like, I think Drew at Willett told me they've given ISC like 8 years of plans. It's like the oak's so sold, it's ridiculous. But back then it was, we got our 2 toasted barrels. We found some people that were like, hey, do you want to do this toasted experience with us and kind of experiment? And next thing you know, we're like, it's been 8 days and this tastes way different. Let's pull it, And so as it kind of has gone and gone and gone, by the end of 2020, we were limit 1. It was like limit 1 was Weller Antique. Limit 1 was Blanton's, We were limit 1 at Total Wine Lexington for a barrel. They took a whole barrel of toasted and it took like a week to sell limit 1. We were like, whoa, our toasted bourbon is like the deal. So that like completely exploded and became like, let's check out what Starlight's doing. Like I'm at the Hubers and met all these people finishing in all these weird brandies and wine barrels. And then, now we're here and it's like, I talked to the guys today and we got some like vanilla cognac barrels. I got a VDN barrel they filled. They're filling some maple syrup barrels with straight bourbon and double oak bourbon. So now we're doing like double finishes because we have some time behind us. But like, that's how we got in the industry, totally by accident. But now it's just like, how do we make whiskey taste good? Like if it's missing sweetness, but you don't want to like just squirt honey in the barrel, you can throw it in a barrel that aged honey and then it gets, it extracts, it goes in and out of the wood. And now you have like a cohesive integrated profile. It doesn't taste, it doesn't taste fake. It doesn't taste like you're adding flavoring. And, there's so many ways to manipulate the whiskey. And that's just kind of what we're trying to explore is like, how can we be transparent to the consumer and tell them to the T, like we left it this many days in this barrel, pumped it into this barrel for this many days, and here's what you have, enjoy. So yeah.
Geez, man. I mean, for just the short amount of time you've been kind of in the game, it seems like you guys are diving in head first and making a big splash, for lack of a better term. But that's really cool to hear. So talk to us, like you said that any reason tequila was because the first release from Nulu was tequila, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So that was like the original business plan. They'd gotten into Forecastle Fest, they gotten on shelves in Kentucky, and like it sold a little bit. It was actually getting some pull through. But you'll get a kick out of this. So before we got into whiskey, like, when we're still just cutting our teeth, my dad's trying to fix this whole situation. We got a truckload of tequila in from Jalisco. It was like 10,000 liters, so 10 totes. First shipment was 110 proof. We got it chemically tested. There was like minimal ppms of methanol. It was like very good, pure 100% blue agave distillate. So very good tequila. The second load from the same place, 110 proof. It was pretty good, but the methanol was still like there was no methanol. It was just really good distillate. So we enjoyed it. We barrel aged it. We still have some of both of those truckloads. The third truckload got to the border. I think this was like late 2018, early 2019. And every time you get 10,000 liters of something, you're like, can I get like an ounce or like a bottle? Can you ship me one before I take this whole truckload of juice? So we get the sample and we're like, bro, it's shit. So we call them up. We're like, hey, can you guys like redistill this or something? Like it tastes like gasoline. And they're like, yeah, just send the sample back. And then next thing you know, it's like a few weeks go by and we're like, so what's going on? They just quit returning phone calls and they just kept the truckload, kept the money. And like, so we lost our tequila connection.
They kept your money?
Yeah. Like, what are we going to do? Go down to Mexico with a big stick? No. You don't go down to Mexico with a big
stick. There
now. Yeah, I'm in the wrong part, man. I'm in the fun part. I'm not in the freaking tequila capital, but so that's what I will say. Today I got hooked up with a tequila wholesaler. So because, like we were talking earlier, like I love tequila. It's a great break from whiskey. Like you can only drink so much 120, 115, 130 proof bourbon. Especially where you guys are at, where it gets up to like the hundreds, it's like you can only drink so much bourbon outside before you just have to go inside. Whereas tequila, it's a nice change up, just to have in the arsenal. So we'll put our Kentucky spin on tequila here in the future. But yeah, that's kind of what happened.
So are you guys planning on releasing tequila again?
Yeah, so we have from those first two successful truckloads, the last barrel we harvested was 5 years. It was aged in a 27-year light whiskey barrel from Seagram's for like 4 years, and then we threw it into a Nulu like double oak barrel. So basically new American oak that had some whiskey influence. 5 year, 123.2 proof tequila. Let me tell you, that is the most Kentucky tequila ever, but at 123 proof, it drinks like 105. Like you are in trouble once you're
so you're not proofing it down.
No, it came in at 110, and then like the way our building works, if you ever come to Kentucky, you'll see like how square peg and a round hole our business is. Like it's so fucking wrong. But like upstairs, the HVAC just poured out because it's like the building we're in is like half of it was built in 1880, the other half was built in like 1970, so it's just super old. But like the HVAC just cooked those tequila barrels from 110 proof to like mid 120s in 5 years. And they're banging, dude, like super sweet. It's like if you could like take agave syrup and squirt it all over romaine lettuce and then throw like a little dirt on it, that's what it tastes like. It's so sweet, so vegetal, so good. It's awesome. But yeah, so hopefully 5 years from now, we'll have some more extra añejo, but now we only have like 8 barrels left from those first 2 truckloads.
Sorry, my son snuck in the room. I'm sure some people saw him.
Trying to be with daddy,
Yeah. So talk to me about Prohibition Craft Spirits. I think you kind of mentioned it a little bit. Like I think you mentioned is Baxter. That's still a brand you guys do, or is it just Nulu now? Or what's I mean, I'm rocking the shirt you got me. All the need. So what other brands fall under the Prohibition Craft Spirits?
So we have Baxter's Rum, which is a dying breed that is like only sold at the distillery. But that was one of the original things that like was part of the business, along with Phoenix Hill Vodka and Highlands Gin. So those 3 were like all distilled in-house, 8-time distilled vodka, 8-time distilled gin that was infused, and then vapor infused. And then those were all mashed in-house. And we actually, our rum is now like 4 and 5 year. It is a blackstrap, molasses, and sugarcane mash, distilled, pot distilled in Kentucky. Some of it was new cooperage, some of it was like Maker's barrels and Four Roses barrels. But all of those things, like our parent company, my dad's company, is PCS Distilling Co. So PCS, Prohibition Craft Spirits. That's like how we tried to like tie everything in, like all the legalities. Like I think my dad has like 7 or 8 licenses to like import, export, sell, and then you have all these state licenses so to have all these umbrellas and all these corporations, that's kind of how it all tied in. But Prohibition Craft Spirits is like, Prohibition Craft Spirits, the shirt you're wearing, that logo. My father-in-law actually manages that for us now. That's like our on-premise distillery experiences. So we're still trying to navigate that. I have my opinions. Like, I'm a whiskey nerd. I'm like, people want to come in and like taste from the barrel and fill their own bottle. And then, the other side of things are like, no, we like right now we give a tour that's like about moonshining and prohibition and like how our distiller had a moonshining charge and how that all kind of like ties in. Whereas, like I said, the other end of the spectrum is like 100% whiskey, let people taste from the barrel, talk about what Nulu's doing, but it's a cohesive, fluid thing. But Prohibition Craft Spirits is like the house of Nulu, if you will. If you come to Kentucky, come to Prohibition Craft Spirits, at least you'll have a good time. Like if you spend $15, I guarantee you get a $15 buzz, if not like $100 buzz. But like, we want to show you our booze, show you like what we're doing, and just have you out and kind of like answer questions. So that's how it all ties in. It's all a mess. Like, as you can tell, like the business started as a mess. So we're, we never dreamt of this. Like I said, 20 barrels, man. Like we took a PayPal loan. You think I ever dreamt of like last year we sold 785 barrels.
I've never heard of a PayPal loan.
Bro, it's like a savage email. They're like, hey, you crying? You crying next to your phone with a lot of debt? We'll give you a little more debt. They like, it like pushes to your Instagram. It's like swipe up for 10 grand.
Sorry, I had to shut that door real quick. My apologies. So, what does Nulu mean? Talk to us about the meaning of the name.
So it means New Louisville. It's a neighborhood downtown Louisville. It's right by like Whiskey Row, if you're familiar with like Old Forester's building or Merle's. Like, so you're about 3 blocks. If you go 3 blocks east on Market Street, you're in the Nulu area. It's just like it was, gentrified, of course, and like breweries, speakeasies, hotels. Now you have like whiskey bars, like some of the local chains, and then some like independents have opened up some really cool tasting bars. I mean, there is some killer pours. And then you have like really good food. It's just kind of like the hip place to be. It's not huge. You're still in Kentucky. You're still in Louisville. But it is the new.
There's like a liquor store there called like, I'm probably missing. Is it Justin's or something? I can't remember.
Yeah, Justin's House of Bourbon. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Is that in that same area, or am I thinking of the wrong area?
They're like, technically it's like a block from Nulu, but yeah, I mean, like our distillery isn't exactly in Nulu, but I mean that whole area. I mean, if it's like a stone's throw away, you're there. So it's like just part of downtown. But yeah, Justin's is there, and I mean Justin's is a mecca for bourbon. I mean, that's a liquor store that basically, I think the only vodka they had, or they used to have it, was Wheatley's before they got raided. But now they're like, fuck Sazerac. So it's just all bourbon. There's no Sazerac. They've been an amazing partner for us. They do like probably 10 barrels a year with us. It's crazy. Like just out of the Louisville store, basically. But
well, Chase, we love Sazerac. So I'm just going to pretend that I didn't hear you say that.
Hey, I was quoting them. Excuse me.
Okay,
but yeah, actually, whenever Scott Beth at Pacific Edge was like, yo, I think Eureka wants to do something with you all. I'm like, Eureka with like an exclamation point out of California? And he was like, yeah, have you heard of him? I was like, bro, like when I started collecting out of Screw Top OWA that was like Eureka. I'm like, is it the same one? And I saw the logo from your email and I'm like, what? No way, we're doing business with them. Like that's how this business has gone, man. It like went from being a nerd to like, what? I'm getting to shake hands with the K&Ls, the Eureka, all these people out west that are like, you guys have been picking barrels.
That's pretty cool, dude. I'm not gonna lie, that's awesome. Like that was like one of the early picks of the club. I think that was like, the only way I can imagine. So like, sorry, a lot of our members know this, but like when COVID hit, we were trying to find ways of just to get money, like to liquidate fund or liquidate product and get cash, and it was a tough time. We were selling barrel picks of Weller 107 for like $35 a bottle. Like people were coming into our restaurants being like, "I'll take 3. How much do you have?" We were like, "We got like 4 cases." They're like, "We'll buy it all." And I'm like, "We're like, okay, I'll sell you 1 case. I'll sell you 1 case. How's that sound?" So I'm sure a lot of that stuff hits secondary, which is probably how you got your bottle. That's super
for
cool.
Sure. Like I'm guilty as the next guy of like being a tater.
No, yeah, nothing wrong with it.
X, Y. You sell X and Y, and you buy Z. Whatever. If as long as you crack it, the good guys recognize the good guys. But yeah, man, that's cool. I didn't know that. Like, you guys, I'm sure COVID hit you guys hard. You guys have how many restaurants?
Well, we have 29 now, but we had pre-COVID we had 26, and we lost 2. And it was difficult times for everyone, but we're on to greener pastures, and it's fun. It wasn't fun in the moment, but it's one of those things you can look back on and laugh. Which again, perfect segue into my next question. So, what has been your favorite and least favorite experience in the whiskey industry to date?
Oh man, I've been drinking all day, so I'll be candid. The least favorite experience is when the guy, like, like I'd spit whiskey on the floor Monday through Friday at like 9 a.m. just because I'm like, I gotta taste this shit. So like the dude's like, look at my collection, look at me, look at my shit. I'm like, especially when it's like a Friday pick at like 5 p.m. I'm like, dude, I don't give a fuck about your collection. That's me being crusty, right? So my favorite thing about whiskey is the barrels, man. Like, we're to the point now, like, so 3 years in, I brought this pick. It's a 8-year, 126 proof, 126.6. I think there's maybe like 120 bottles, but it's just a high rye, 36% rye MGP. But it aged like 2.5 years in our warehouse. When those turned 8 last November, like I remember going into Thanksgiving, and like again, it's all been a blur ever since like October 2020 hit. It was like, boom, we're in all these different states, and these barrels turned 8, and it was like, oh man, I remember. I love whiskey, I love bourbon. Like these barrels are 8 now. What the fuck? This is what we work for. Like, excuse my language, but like it was so. You look at this barrel and you're like, there's 120 bottles in here that are extremely high proof for MGP. And like, my favorite thing is just to find good barrels, man. Like in our warehouse or going on picks. I just had somebody setting up a pick for August, and he was like, hey, we're going to be at Four Roses at 10 a.m. Can we make it to your place by 2? I was like, you can make it to my place by 2 if you let me go to Four Roses with you. And, I said LOL at the end just so he knew I wasn't like that serious. And he was like, if we can say we took Chase from Nulu on our pick, you can come. I'm like, deal. You can say whatever you want about your pick. I don't care. I just love to go to Four Roses and taste, so the good parts of whiskey, like I could talk for hours about that. The bad part is like just when you get crusty, it's like when somebody's new to it and they're like, look at my 20 Blantons, and you're like, I don't care about your Blantons, dude. Have you tried Nulu? Like this toasted Eureka blend shits on all the Blanton's 93 proof on the shelves, or like it's unless it's like 1986 Blanton's, I don't care about it,
All right. Well, we're going to put that as a quote on our next email that goes out.
I can get you a shot in my face if you need it.
So tell us about the blend. So we're sitting at a 112 proof. Mash bill is 75% corn, 21%.
Yep.
21% rye. 4% malted barley, MGP juice.
Correct. So it's one of the most standard. That's like the most standard MGP bourbon mash bill in the marketplace at this point. Back when like Bell Mead, Boone County, and all those other folks were getting a hold of like the LDI distilled stuff. Still, the 75-21-4 is one of the most distilled things from the Seagram's, LDI, MGP, Roslyn Squibb, whatever you want to call it. So that mash bill is tried and true. I mean, you got big. We're seeing now like Kentucky distilleries are laying down that 75-21-4, which is nuts because they weren't doing that 5-10 years ago. But yeah, so you started with a base of 6 barrels. I believe it was from 2 runs, a December 2017 and an April 2018 run. So the juice in here, I think we harvested 4-year 11 month and then 5-year 4 months. So basically all 5 years and older. The bottle's age stated 4 to 6 years old. But so we took a good base blend. We sacrificed some double oaked bourbon. Actually, I think we took 2 double oaked bourbons that were like 6 months in char 1 heavy toast. So they're basically like just toasteds on steroids. And we threw those in with 4 straight bourbons. From there, we threw those into new American oak. So we took that base blend, right, and then split it up into new barrels. And we used some various toasts, it was all heavy toast, but we used a few different char levels. I think we let it go for about 8 weeks, if I'm remembering. But basically the goal when we're toasting, right, like, because people are like, what's your toasted? Because their toasted's different from yours. And then what's your double oak? Because your double oak's like double oak.
And talk about what toasted means, like just so for our members that may not know.
So when you char a barrel, you shoot a flame through the staves, right? So like a minute, minute and a half, 3 minutes. Those are your, between those time frames.
Light, medium, alligator, yeah.
Right. You're very quick, right? Like within 3 minutes, you can have char 1 or char 5. Whereas toasting is low and slow. Think like barbecue. So when you shoot a flame through those staves, you create a surface layer of char. And you have some sugars behind it, but whenever you slow cook it out, that whole stave, you got to think that stave's what, an inch and a half thick. You're oozing out all the wood sugars and opening up the potential in that oak where, 5-10 years ago, whatever, the barrels we were harvesting as straight bourbon, they're mostly just char 4 barrels. There's a lot of char 4, especially the MGP, some char 3, like Heaven Hill is 100% char 3 for Elijah Craig. All these people just have these old ways of doing things. They have time behind them. They're not like us where it was like, we just love whiskey. And now we're like, oh crap, we have a brand. So we figured out if you take like a straight bourbon that maybe an 8 or 7 out of 10, and then you take a barrel that was slow cooked, and now you have a new barrel that you're throwing this already aged bourbon into, right? It's already aged. It just might have a corn note, or it might have too much ethanol, or whatever the ailment is. That new toasted oak is a new life for that whiskey. It has new wood sugars. It has new oils. It has all this new oak and love to give the whiskey. So you throw it into this new barrel, and within days, you can tell a difference. But if you let it go for weeks, months at a time, that's how you get something like this. Now you have butter as you drink it. Yeah, I mean, it's 112 proof. You're going to taste booze. I hope so. 56% alcohol, shit. But as you drink it, like the oils that get on your tongue.
It's not your 123 proof tequila, is it?
Bro, I'm telling you, that shit is dang. You make a margarita with that, you're done. Like, you're going to put like 8 ounces in the margarita and you're asleep. I'm telling you. But for whiskey's sake, with this one, it's like the nose is just, you can like smell the thickness from the toast, right? Like all those oils, you can smell the sugar, and it just comes across very, like the candy corns,
it's like vanilla frosting for sure for me.
yeah, just all the cornucopia of desserts. You get like brown sugar, you get the wood notes, but
And as always, if you're tasting at home, and you want to type in the comments here what you're tasting as well. I mean, we have our tasting notes here. I mean, like on the nose, I said I get a lot of vanilla ice cream, vanilla frosting, a little bit of butterscotch, that round, just very round, sweet characteristics. On the palate, I get like actually some black cherry, candied dates, a lot of cinnamon nut.
Oh no. Did I lose you?
No. Kind of some grainy oak, cookie dough-esque, but yeah, it's a great whiskey. Chase, I got a couple more questions for you. Then we got to hop into some Q&A from our audience. So if you haven't asked. I think I lost you there for a second. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, I was just saying, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, just make sure you're logged into the account associated with your membership name. And we're going to start asking Chase some questions from our members here in a second. Couple things. Not sure if you had a chance to think about it, but we talked about choosing a song to add to our playlist. For what represents Nulu, what represents this whiskey.
Morgan Wallen, I Deserve a Drink. You know, just a good old redneck song. We all deserve a drink. You know, there you go. Oh, am I losing you? Yeah.
All right. Sorry, my internet's a bit finicky at the moment.
No worries.
My slogan this month is going to be, my dad always likes to chime in on these calls and tell me what to do, and he's been telling me I need to pick this song called "If the River Was Whiskey" by Charlie Poole and the North Carolina Ramblers. So I think the Spin Doctors have done it, a bunch of bands have done it, but so that's my choice for this month is "If the River Was Whiskey" in honor of my dad, because he keeps telling me to pick that song because he likes it a lot. So
here's to your pop, man.
Oh, this internet. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to dive into so you have your cards here. Before we dive into questions, obviously tasting notes as always, history of the distillery, great cocktail using some Amaro Nonino, which is one of my favorites. I really toasted Manhattan. Highly recommend it. So we are going to dive into some questions here from our audience, and then we'll choose a winner. Hopefully my internet is, the company tells me I have the best internet available in my area, but yet it seems every month we have issues.
I got the Mexican internet today, man. It's me. It's me.
You're better than mine.
My fault.
All right. So we'll start off with kind of a fun question here. Sarah Steepleton asks, ever think about making a label that looks like a wanted poster?
Huh. No, never thought of that. We are going to
sticker.
Yeah, like because that ties into like the whole, the Ben J. We are going to make a brand called Kentucky Con Man. It's probably initial release is going to be like a $60, $65 MSRP. It's going to be Kentucky sourced, and it's going to probably be a bottled and bond.
And that's under the Nulu, or that's under a different brand name?
So you know how like that whole question about like what the hell is prohibition, but PC,
Yeah.
So I'm arguing with my dad. I'm like, it needs to say bottled by Nulu Whiskey Company, just so people can like relate, like
brand recognition.
Right, like the flavor of Nulu is good. So like as long as everything bottled by Nulu is good, we're But ideally it would be Kentucky Con Man bottled by Nulu Whiskey Co.
Cool. Alan Rosenbaum wants to know how many times / batches can you use a toasted barrel?
You can use them multiple times. Back in the day, like when we had like 4 toasting barrels, we use them twice. We've since anything produced after 2021 has been all new American oak. So we use barrels one time. We're very blessed to have the contracts we have. We're very bougie, right? Like you're spending a few $100. You might use it for 2 weeks. You might use it for 20 months, but still you're getting like a speck of the use of that oak, because you guys got to think like Scotland, right? Like these bourbon barrels going to Scotch producers for 40 years. Like those barrels have tons of love to give to spirit or breweries or, so, but yeah, for us, we're very picky. Like we don't have a lot of space. So time is of the essence. So we use barrels one time new. And then once they're done, they're done.
Andrew Bemis wants to know what's your favorite barrel finish you've done so far?
Ooh, man.
Tough question.
Probably, yeah, right? Like, man, you got to think about them all. So it's either, if y'all ever tried, it was a 2019 release that Bardstown Bourbon Company apple brandy finished. It was like 11-year MGP that was 20 months in Copper and Kings casks. For me, that one was super, super influential in like what we do today. So probably our apple brandy, we just released one barrel. It was a 6-year that we let go 2.5 years in apple brandy from Copper and Kings. So a total of 30 months. That's probably my favorite finish. But like everyday finish, like that's one barrel. Every day, the double oak. Just, you're taking bourbon, you're getting, a 6-year bourbon that might drink like it's 8 to 10 years old. So
little sneak preview. We just picked a Hawaiian honey finished barrel. I won't say who it's from, but that should be coming out here pretty in the next few months. So
some good old Kentucky boys. I know those guys.
Yeah.
So those actually at one of the Jimmy's kitchen table is where I met our master taster.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's all full circle in Louisville and Kentucky. It's fun times.
So kind of the opposite end of the question, Mark. Again, I apologize for mispronouncing anybody's last name, but Mark V. We'll just say Mark V. Sorry, Mark. Any finishes that turned out terrible?
Yeah, we did a Sauterne barrel. It took too long in transit to get to us, so it like turned vinegar. And like for the first 6 months, it tasted like, Sauterne is like a wine made of like waste fruit, so it tasted like rotten fruit and vinegar. But I think we pulled it after like 10 months and then threw it into a sherry barrel that had apple brandy in it for 5 years. We're like, it's already weird. Let's make it really, really weird. Now it's been in there for like 2 years and it's good. But yeah, sometimes you just gotta it's peaks and valleys, right? When you're in the barrel. So when it goes bad, you just let it go for a few years.
Shannon Smith asks, what's your strategy basically when it comes to sourcing? How do you pick your barrels? And are you planning on ever getting into your own distillate?
So we have 12 barrels of our own distillate. The issue is our current still system takes a week to make one barrel. 1 week. So like at the scale we're at, we would have to spend, like 25 million and get like 3 shifts worth of people to be relevant to like keep up with the scale we have as far as reach and distribution footprint. So we were always going to contract a still. To further answer that question, like now we have, we own about 22 to 2,400 barrels on cash. Thank God, because of Nulu. So like when I talk to brokers now versus day one, it was like, give me whatever I can have. Now it's like, look, I don't need to buy your barrels unless they're what I want. Like, what floor are they? What warehouse are they? What mash bill, what cooperage. Cooperage plays a huge part. Like Speyside's our favorite because you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get a nice, typically if they're 5 or 6 years old, it was made by hand over open oak flame. So you're going to get some toast from that just because it's open oak. It's not automated. It's not just, getting fired and then torched and then watered. And then Kelvin barrels, 100% made by hand. They're standard barrels toasted. So, just knowing different things about the industry, knowing different corks from each cooperage, just in the MGP world, not even talking about now we're looking into like, can I find some 125 proof entry 70-21-9 Green River that's in Kelvin. Like, we're getting that specific with these brokers. It's like, can you find me a lot of 300 of those? So at this point, it's just all based on what we know does well over time and like what we've tasted. We've been lucky to taste 4,000, 5,000 MGP barrels at 4, 5, 6 years old. So you taste that much. I don't want to call it young, but you taste that much just over the cusp of aged bourbon. You can really say like, wow, those barrels are exceptional if they were aged here and they were this mash bill. So that's kind of what we're looking for, just trying to make good investments, but also, and I'll close with this, pricing. If it's the best barrel ever, but it costs us, $8,000 and I got to sell it for an astronomical price, it doesn't make sense. The whole goal of Nulu is to put something in the bottle that represents the dollars that you guys are going to spend on it. Like this toasted at $75. I hope you guys feel like it's a great deal. So that's also like the premise as well, is if we can price it out and give you as the consumer a good price, and also it tastes better than what you spent on it, that's most important.
Awesome. I'm going to try to get as many questions as possible. We got a lot of questions.
Good. Love it. It's all about whiskey. That's the best part.
All right. I'm going to try to dwindle Brendan Franco's question down here a little bit, but are there any finishing techniques or combination of techniques that you feel stand out for your whiskey? Anything you'd like to experiment with, finish or blend that hasn't been tried before at Nulu?
For unique style, so we've been getting into staves. We've started to do some research and development with independent stave, kind of just building off of what Maker's Mark has done. So we've always used just new toasted and charred American oak barrels. Whereas, in conjunction with the new barrels, we're able to get like a vanilla stave or like a red fruit stave, or, you can't toast a barrel vanilla toast because it'll dry out. It won't hold liquid. Whereas if I get a plank of wood that's, 2 inches by 3 feet and it's, an 1/8 inch thick, let's call it looks like flooring. If I can get a bunch of vanilla flooring and throw it into the juice and then pull it, and now I have a vanilla note that's natural, it's oak derived, it's not just vanilla Tootsie flavoring, now you're really manipulating the whiskey like Maker's Mark. So, it all comes down to
what's the process in making those staves? Like they're
taking new American oak, it's seasoned, so it's still air seasoned oak, but they're throwing it into, they do it a number of ways. They do convection, so it's low and slow convection heat, or they do infrared, or they do a combination. And so you got to think those, if they're doing infrared, it's only hitting one side. So they may only toast one side, so you have some different flavors throughout the oak, because it's, they're about 1/8, 1/4 inch thick. But man, I could talk hours on sticks. They're, at the end of the day, they're just oak sticks, but we call them computer sticks, and they're incredible. Like, these people have like 20, 30 years R&D behind, if we toast at 187 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours and 45 minutes, we get red fruit. It's like, please, how did you figure that out? I don't know how, but can I have 100 of them, please? Thanks. It's like, there's so much time. It's bourbon, right? It's, hey, we burn a barrel and put some corn juice in it. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, it's redneck as fuck, but you got some dude that's like in a lab who's a doctorate of oak, and he's like, no, I figured out vanilla, because vanilla is like the vanillin. There's all these different I forget what they're called because I'm not that smart, but they're basically oils, sugars, and lipids from the oak that create these different, like with weed, it's like terpenes. Like there's different, it's just the different flavors and aromatics and oils that you can get. So we're really excited about that, because like in cognac, for instance, we got a hold of some barrels so every other spirit besides bourbon, you're allowed to fudge, right? You can do 2%, up to 2% flavoring, or we call it Tootsie juice because it's cheating. It's like throwing Tootsies in your barrel. But in cognac, we got a hold of these vanilla barrels that age Madagascar vanilla, and it makes a vanilla cognac concentrate that they pitch, a gallonage at a time. Not a lot, but they're using less than 2% to throw a vanilla note into their cognac. So being able to create those kinds of flavors with oak versus Madagascar vanilla beans or aging fruit in the barrel, that stuff's really exciting, just to see where people are able to go just with duration and temperature on oak.
That's cool. I learned something new. I didn't know about these stave wizards figuring out how to produce vanilla and red fruit. That's cool. I didn't know that. I learned something new.
Mocha and all that sort. It's nuts, man. There's a rabbit hole for sure.
This question's for me. Michael Osur said, Trevor, how did you find Nulu? And it was Justin's in Louisville. That was the first time I saw it, the first time I tried it. And I was like, I wonder if they distribute this in California. And then very quickly found out they did. And that was the first time I had seen or heard Nulu was March of 2022 when that's the last time I was in Kentucky, which seems like a lifetime ago. I need to go back.
Yeah, come hang out.
I will take you up on that, sir. All right, I got a couple more questions here. We're not going to get to everyone. I apologize. All right. Matthew Archer asks, given the crazy startup story, anything you would change or advice you would give to your younger self?
Oh, man.
A whole 3 years ago.
Right. Like, eat less food, drink less bourbon, be less fat. That's what I would tell myself.
I think we can all relate.
That's about it.
All right, couple more questions here. Jamie Phillips says, what's your favorite bottle your family has made? What is the best part of it being family run?
We just bottled it had 6 gallons in it. It was an 8.5 year high rye bourbon. That's my favorite just because it's 134.8 proof and it drinks 100. I don't know. It drinks so soft, but to be able to there's 30 bottles in that barrel. And we own the barrel. That was that's being a whiskey nerd. You're like, man, do 30 times 25, right? What is that? Man, math's hard. 725, something like that. There's less than 1,000 pours, 1 ounce pours in that barrel, and that's my favorite. Something limited, unique.
All right, trying to find a good last question here. All right, what's the most expensive finishing barrel Nulu has been able to source, and was it worth it?
We got some new French oak, brand new wine barrels from Tonnelleria Redoux, which is a cooperage in France. Those are $1,400 shipped. They're really dope. They give you crazy flavors. You get rich fruit, vanilla, stupid oil, 2-3 weeks, and you have it's pretty amazing. I see why they use them in expensive wine and all, but those and an Amburana, those are the most expensive. You're talking about spending over $1,000 for an empty wooden container. So those are right. They told us if we want more Amburana, they're like, you got to get half a container and split it with us. I'm like, how many is that? They're like 75. I'm like, Dad, we have to spend $80,000 on empty wood. He's like, you're out of your effing mind. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. Maybe we don't need Amburana that bad.
It'll sell.
It'll sell.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's run through these questions. I want you to pick your favorite 2, and then I'll choose the winner here. So we have Sarah Steepleton asked about the wanted poster. Alan Rosenbaum asked about how many times you can use a toasted barrel. Andrew Bemis asked about what's your favorite barrel finish. Mark
like
V
that.
asked any finishes that turned out terrible.
I
Shannon
like
Smith.
those too. Oh, there you go.
Shannon Smith asked about, are you ever planning on getting your own distillate? How does the sourcing work? Brendan asked the question about any finishing techniques or anything unique that hasn't been tried before. Michael asked how I found Nulu.
That's a good question. I like that question. Yeah. Well, let's give whoever asked how you found Nulu the Ambarana. Is that how this works? Or
no, you choose your favorite two, and then I choose who gets what. But now you're putting me in an awkward position because you've already dictated who gets what. Let's. Matt Archer asked any advice you'd give to your younger self.
I like that question. That's a good one too, man.
And
a lot of good questions tonight.
And then what's your favorite part about being a family-run business? And then the last question was the most expensive barrel. So do you want to? You've tentatively chosen one. Do you want to stick with that one? How I found Nulu. That was one of your favorite questions.
That's number one for sure. Because that's a really cool question. That's because we're here about this 1,200 bottle blend we did for you all. How did you find this and how did it come to here? That's a cool question.
All right, so one more question. You like the younger self question, or
that's a good one. Yeah, I laughed a lot at that. We'll do that one.
Okay, all right. So we got how did I find Nulu and what advice you'd give to your younger self? Less bourbon, less food, which I don't necessarily agree with. Everything in moderation.
I drink bourbon and eat food. So,
well, you've already. I would be the bad guy of the century if I didn't give your wishes of the Ambarana barrel to Michael Osur, who asked how I found how I found Nulu, and then Matt Archer will get you a bottle of Nulu Double Oaked. And as always, we'll reach out, get addresses, and send it out. Chase, it's been an absolute pleasure. I don't want to keep you away from your last day in Tulum, but I hope we can work together in the future. And it's been an absolute honor to talk to you, and I learned a lot, so I appreciate it.
Dude, thank you so much for your all's time. Thanks for listening to me babble about whiskey. And if you guys want to do anything else with us, we're happy to have you. We can get as crazy as you want and blend whenever you want. But y'all have a great night. Thank you so much.
All right. Cheers, everyone. Have a good one.